Hello and welcome to Exiles podcast, the original, the biggest, the best Newport County podcast made by the fans for the fans, brought to you as ever by the great guys at the Terrace Cymru podcast network and in association with our friends over at the Riverside Sports Bar, the home of live sport and great burgers in Newport. I am Ed. I am on hosting duties tonight. First of all, listeners, what did you make of the new theme tune? We are trying it as a little experiment. We'd love to know what you think. Big thanks to Taff from the Amber Army, who shared with us the original 1973 recording of Run Lads, Shoot Lads, which hopefully we've attributed correctly in the show notes. If we haven't, let us know so we can correct the record. Our hope is that maybe a new theme tune might bring some fresh luck to Newport County at this most troubling of times. And speaking of bad luck, let's get to business and start by talking about the three games that we've had. And to do that, I'm going to introduce the panel because I've not seen any of the last three games due to a trip away and family commitments. So instead, I'm going to be doing a lot of listening and not much talking tonight, and instead leaning on three panelists who, between them, can talk us through the home draw with Grimsby and away defeats at both Swindon and Franchise. A warm welcome back, first of all, then, to regular podder Alfie Humphreys, who began the season as the young, raw member of the crew, but fittingly in the Hugh Jenkins era of Newport County, finds himself tonight the experienced, wise head, helping to guide a few newer members. Hello to you, Alfie.
Hello, listeners.
And back after it is Logan Fennell. Hello, Logan.
Hello, Ed. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm all right. And making his first appearance on the pod, we're very pleased to welcome George Thomas. Hello to you, George.
Hello, how are you doing?
All right. All right. So let's get straight into it then. This is, as I say, a bumper episode bringing together discussions of the home game against Grimsby, the away trips to Swindon and Milton Keynes. And basically, I want you three to enlighten me about what I've missed so I can learn from it. And George, I'm going to start off with you. Lead off for us on the Grimsby game. From a distance, I was away with Ian Street and Reese Warren, and we were keeping tabs on the game from the Basque Country, where we were on a little lads' holiday, and two missed penalties, one by each team. From a distance, we were trying to work out, was that a point gained or three lost? So what was your view of things?
At the time, I think it was definitely more leaning towards a point gained. But I think after the result at Swindon, MK on Saturday, it's definitely more three lost, I think. Especially with the likes of Barrow, Harrogate and Shrewsbury all picking up results on the weekend. It definitely looks more like 3 points dropped than one gained.
Yeah, I mean, it's that frustrating thing where we managed to be in a game and keep a clean sheet, but not for the first time, and we'll doubtless talk about it. Poor finishing has cost us. There were chances for Ghana, as I understand it, Apoku. What went wrong with the front line?
Well, Garner's chance, it's hard to just whether it's good defending, poor finishing. It's a bit of both. But Apoku, I don't know. I don't know what it is. He's very raw. You can see that he's got a lot of pace going forward. He's a threat when he's behind the defensive line. But then once he's one on one with the keeper, there doesn't seem to be a lot going on. It's just a lot of fluff lines, poor chances missed. There's not a lot going on for him at the moment that's going well.
It's funny with Apoku because, it was maybe a little bit 50-50 in January about whether we wanted to keep him or not. But I think the consensus, it felt like, was he was one who was improving. He'd had a layoff with injury, but he was starting to click maybe. And I feel like his stock has fallen a little bit in the last few games. Is that your reading of it?
At the moment, it's really hard to watch him up front, especially when he's on his own. Because when Garner's on the pitch, he's almost playing as like an 8 or a 10. He's not playing up front as a 9 with Apoku. But like his touch is almost like a tackle. He takes a touch and it's going 5 yards in front of him, which makes it really hard to create something from that. So I don't know. For me, there seems to be like there might be something in the loan deal that he's got to play or start so many games, because it's definitely not working with him up front. But again, what other options do we have? An interesting point that Fuchs said in his pre-match interview, I think it was the Grimsby game. is that James Kroll and Cole Jarvis are, I think his words were, secret weapons to staying up. And he brought James Kroll on the 89th minute. To me, it doesn't make much sense, especially when you've got Garner and Apoku up front who seem to be struggling. It's an interesting comment which doesn't really make sense on the pitch.
But I'll bring in Alfie or Logan if either of you want to jump in on this. I mean, again, from a distance, it looks to me as though all of our attacking options are struggling, and so you switch them out and you try a different one, but none of them are grabbing that opportunity when it comes to them. So what do you do? I mean, I don't know. Is that, who wants to jump in and try and work out how we deal with it?
I'll have a crack at it. I noticed this a lot with the Swindon game as well. It feels like we've got too many selfish attackers. That obviously we need goals in the games, and if they are trying to score, we can't question that. But it's the times they are. There's so many times, a cross could have been put in or a layoff or something where it gives another player a chance to score. That it's a lot. I think the main one is Bobby Camwa, where he tries to go for the goal, which is understandable because we do need him, but it's whether he's taken away that chance for another player to be scoring.
Yeah, I guess that's the problem, isn't it? That yeah, well, yeah, you've said it. I mean, Alfie, any difference of opinion from you on that?
No, I think I agree. We're just in previous seasons we've had like say three strikers and one of them's been poor, the other two can score, but it just seems this season that no one can do it. It could be the service, it could just be how they're up front of their own, but I just think they're very poor strikers.
And I mean, you were at that Grimsby game as well, Alfie. What were your kind of takeaways from it? It just seemed incredibly frustrating that on a rare occasion when we've come up against a good team I think Grimsby looked like a really strong outfit this year. We managed to keep a clean sheet against them. They were perhaps having a little bit of an off day, but we don't capitalize and come away with 3 points.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Really, just yeah, when because we usually do well against the better teams, and well, maybe not this season, but yeah, it's just 2 points lost. I think yeah, it's just hard to watch it and try and get some sort of positives out of it when it's just that bad.
Yeah. And George, how vulnerable did we look defensively? Because again, it's one where you think, great, we've kept a clean sheet, but the stats suggested that it was, we were giving away chances again.
Andy Cook, I don't think he lost a header.
Yeah.
With the way Grimsby were playing, there was a lot of long balls going forward, and Andy Cook, he won almost everything. And I think
To be
in the
fair,
first,
it's a game where Andy Cook has played against us and not scored, which normally you can bet your house on it.
He hit the bar, I think it was in the first 5-10 minutes. And then looked from there that it was going to be a long afternoon. It's vulnerabilities from corners and short corners. We got two out going for a short corner and only one defender's going up there, and then they're just ripping us apart, crossing into the box, and it's a free header every time. It seems to be the case every week at the moment. Crosses and corners, set pieces, seems to be a massive vulnerability.
Yeah, and Sven Sprangler, man of the match, happy with that?
I'm not convinced personally. I don't know if anyone else has got any different opinions on that. He's okay defensively on the ball. I don't think he did anything of note. Same for the Swindon and MK Dons games, really. I think he's come in. I think he's probably got some sort of relationship with Fuchs, obviously, both being Austrian. It would make sense. But not convinced on his performance. And the man of the match was a strange announcement to you with 5 minutes ago. I thought it was a bit of an odd one, personally.
Who would you have given it to?
Well, there's not many options, is there? I think Tom Davis has done a good job since coming back in. He's a bit more defensively capable than Glennon. He's not got as strong as a cross going forward, but he's certainly more defensive. It probably would have been Tom Davis and me on Saturday against Grimsby. I certainly wouldn't have given it to Sprangler.
Logan, you look like you're about to jump in.
Yeah. I'm not going to try and defend Sven as much as I have been made out to be by some of the people around me. I do think, from what I saw, the reason he left St. Johnstone to come join us is he was being played out of position. He was being played too far up the pitch, and it looks like we're doing it again. Like it from what FootMob and a lot of the score apps are saying, it looks like we're normally setting in a 4-1-4-1, and normally that second attacking midfielder seems to be Sven. And I have to question it why we're using a player who said he likes us in his interview said he likes to sit in front of the defensive line, who you look at his stats likes to sit in the defensive line, breaks up the tackles and breaks up the play. Why we're putting him so far up? Even at MK Dons, it looked like he was playing half as an 8. That I've got a question. We brought in a player to make us not so defensively weak in the middle, and we're playing him up by the likes of Ghana. It feels like we're profiling him, a player we brought him, which we've needed for a while, and we brought him in to play basically a 10 when he should be a 6.
I mean, is that just a result of the fundamental issues we've got, which is, Smith is crocked more often than he's available. Shepherd is crocked more often than he's available. So we end up having to play square pegs in round holes. If players are out of form, then we're kind of juggling the pack. And I mean, I think it's just testament to the fact it's quite a shallow squad. Maybe I don't know. That's the charitable interpretation of it, but maybe not.
Well, with the situation we're in, and yes, we've got major injuries to big players, and so not all our midfielders are on form. But why risk the squad and the games when we're 5 points away from safety? You got to play your players in the best positions, and you look at the bench. You've got the likes of obviously Jarvis playing 45 minutes against MK Dons, but should be playing a lot more. You've got Lloyd on the bench, someone we chose to keep on, who excels in that 10 position. You think back to when we won those strings of games under Hughes with the 4-4-2 diamond formation. He was playing in that 10 and we were thriving with it. It just feels like we're playing a player that doesn't need to play in that position, because I don't know if it's a ego thing, if it's we want to make sure he plays, but with how Brennan has done recently in centre backs over the last 2 games, depending on his injury, obviously from MK Dons, I would prefer Sven in that number 6 over Brennan currently.
George?
I think fitness has been such a frustrating thing for us this season, with the inconsistency, I should say, of your Matt Smith, your Liam Shepherd, Tom Davis, who's been in and out the squad, Matt Baker, who's had a long-term injury, Lee Jenkins, who seems to be out now. But I think Matt Smith and Liam Shepherd in particular, they were like the marquee signings, so to say, in the summer. And Liam Shepherd, particularly against Bristol, just looks so unfit. And then coming in against Grimsby, just a week later, doesn't look any different. I think he came off at around 70 minutes. And then obviously we didn't see him at Swindon or MK. It's just a really frustrating thing to watch, because they're the 2 players that you'd think have got the experience that would keep us up, and the mindset in the team to help those younger players. But they just probably taken up the biggest chunk of wage at the club and haven't played much at all between the 2 of them this season.
Yeah, that may be something that we might come back to a little bit later on, and I also would like to just unpack a bit more this formation stuff, where it seems to be 4-1-4-1 sometimes, 4-2-3-1 others. Are we getting the most out of the players? But let's move on and talk about that Swindon away game on Wednesday night, Alfie. I know you were there for that one. Before the game, my mate Swindon Phil texted me and said, we basically refuse to play any football in the first half of games and then usually step it up in the second, which seemed remarkably prescient to me. I'd also predicted before the game that it would be a kind of bog standard 2-0 win for Swindon, where they go through the gears enough to beat us and we huff and puff ineffectively. So the predictions were spot on by those of us who weren't at the game. But what did you make of it at the game?
Yeah, frustrating. First half, I think we had maybe 2 chances. I think Spellman hit the side netting and Biggins hit one wide. We did all right. I thought we could, get a point here, but numerous times in the season, it's gone into half time, and I know the other team are going to get like a bollocking basically from the manager and come out and do better. And the amount of times it's happened, and Swindon did that, I felt I think in the change rooms they're like the team you're playing, Newport, a bottom two for a reason. Go out there and just outplay them. And I think not necessarily they outplayed us, but they scored. They scored 2 goals. They had shots. I think our first shot on target was at the 90th minute. Like you can't do that. It's just really frustrating. And yeah, yeah. I don't even know how to just describe it. It's just so annoying seeing a team who 6 years ago cared and played for the badge, and now it just feels like they're getting paid to kick a ball around for 90 minutes and have a mid-season holiday when you don't have a game for 2 weeks. But yeah, it's just annoying.
Well, again, I think we might have further howls of despair as we come on to the franchise game in a minute. But just in terms of incidents from that Swindon game, there was a good penalty shout. I I thought when I saw the highlights just before the goal, and it felt like it was very 2025-26 Newport County of, we have a half decent penalty shout. We're still cursing our luck when the other team have gone up to our end and scored a goal. What was your reading of it from the stands?
Yeah, I thought it was a definite penalty in the moment, and I
Mm.
was ready to run up the steps again on the pitch and chase the ref. But watching the highlights afterwards, I still think it was a penalty because there's a few people online saying, "Oh no, he got the ball," but it was a penalty. But we probably would have missed because we
Yeah,
don't score penalties.
that's true.
But yeah, what I found was when I think it was Tan, I think he got fouled.
Mm.
He got up straight away, obviously because the chance was still there. Another maybe more experienced player would have looked for the foul and probably not given anyway. But yeah, he showed that he still wanted to go for the ball, but maybe if he did stay down, it may be a different outcome. But as I said, probably would have missed if he got given anyway.
Yeah, I mean that is just the frustration, isn't it? Even the half chances and half appeals aren't going our way, but I do feel like, good teams make their own luck a little bit, and we can spend all season bemoaning the decisions we might have had, and you know, but you've got to create more. The stat I think is we've now played just under 7 hours of football since last scoring a goal. And as we said on social media yesterday, that to put it in context, that's time to watch all of The Godfather 2, and catch a train from Newport to Bristol Temple Meads. So, that's quite a long time to go without getting a goal. We didn't manage a single shot on target against franchise. As you said, we went almost an entire game against Swindon without getting a shot. I mean, it's pretty obvious where the problems are. Um, and then there was also that incident in the Swindon game where Apoku, I think, enraged the home fans, putting his finger to his lips as he went off, which G'd up the Swindon support at exactly kind of the most critical moment of the game. What did you make of that?
Yeah, it just summed us up. Just like we're in a relegation battle. Yeah, we were 0-0 at the time against a team who were fourth, but it just summed us up that we aren't scoring goals and trying to antagonize the Swindon fans. And by the time he'd made it around the pitch, they'd scored. So just, yeah, just annoying. I wish he'd gone off the normal side because he had to go around because he was over there. But yeah, it just summed us up.
George, Logan, any thoughts on that Swindon game, either of you?
I think it does sum us up pretty much, that Swindon game. That first half, if we managed to win it or draw it, would have been one of the performances of the season. Like, we were creating chances, were getting the ball up the pitch, we were making the tackles, we stopped him scoring. It was a pretty good team effort, and I think it also showed where, again, the front half of the team is where it lacks the most. Like there was multiple times we managed to get the ball over their defense or like up to Poku or Spellman, and they just didn't release it in time. And Jamieson, for his first like proper start, I was quite happy with him. I thought he was a pretty not good player, but exciting, and there's potential with him. But it, it just shows when, with I think he came on in about the 76th minute. Glennon at left wing had the most excitement of the game. It shows our forward options when we're excited. Glennon, who's been berated all season for being our worst player, has got the fans up off their seats because he's taken a man on and he's almost scored a 2 or 3 goals.
But I mean, we've been saying for ages that
Yeah.
surely is where we need to be trying Glennon at this point, because if he's weak defensively, but he, like you say, he can take a man on, he can swing a cross in. There's got to be a logic for trying it. And to be fair, I suppose Fuchs is listening to that. But uh, the other point you make, yeah, I mean Jameson. So that his first start.
Yes, he came on for probably about 15 minutes against Rovers,
Okay.
and I don't think he made another appearance. I don't think he was on the bench or started against Grimsby. So I think that's his first start, yes.
Yeah. What did you make of him, Alfie, in the ground? I mean, again, he's one who it's going to take him a little while to come up to the level, same as Jarvis, same as Kroll, but and they're having to do it in a side that is losing games and struggling and where there's a lot of pressure. So it's not ideal, but all of those players have got to come of age quite quickly.
Yeah, I thought he looked okay, especially for his first start. Because when he came out at Bristol Rovers, I thought we've just signed another one of these one of these sort of players. But yeah, he looked all right. I think he misplaced a couple of passes in the first 10 minutes or so, but he looked quite fast. He was pressing. He took a few men on. I do think he was a bit harsh him going off, but fitness and his first start probably in a while, and it's a different. He's over in America. It's a different game in these leagues. So yeah, but then he didn't feature at all yesterday after a decent performance at Swindon. So it doesn't make any sense.
Well, let's get on to yesterday's game then. And Logan, you can talk to us about this. And I want to start, Logan, by asking you about Fuchs's post-match comment. So we had 0 shots on target, but Fuchs said that we were the better team overall, which presumably was a great comfort to you and the 224 other county fans who'd made the trip.
I refused to listen to his press match conference on the way home. I said to a few people I was at the game with, I was like, if I hear one of the bingo card terms, I might try and throw something at him from the stand. But he's annoyingly, he's not wrong, but not right. Like I listened to it when I got home, when I had a bit more mental ability to not break down. But objectively, we we did play good football, just not capitalizing. I was with Fab at the game. I just stood by him, and we were wondering if we were going to break the Nottingham Forest record that they set a couple of days ago with 35 shots out of any game. MK Dons got to 20, so they weren't far off. But you look at that mistake again. It just sums up our season. Wright makes a good effort to can't stop Patterson getting anywhere near the ball, and it just straight into typical Aaron Collins's feet. And then you have 3 players there who are just unable to get the little tap to get it away from goal, and it just sums it up. But then I was rewatching the highlights a little while ago today. Just we had 2 amazing chances to score and win. Biggins, I think Cole Palmer rivals him for the worst miss I've seen in a while. And then a poker as well. Just if he got the ball a bit low, it would have gone straight into the goal. And I think that game summed up where I'm a bit worried about the whole team going forward. Is there seems to be an issue between Fuchs and the team. that I'm reading, that Fuchs keeps saying he wants to play this way, he wants to make the team work. And I do believe it could, but this isn't the time or place for it. If we're still up next season, he's got free reign to try and do whatever he wants to try and keep us up in the league or push us on. But right now, he's trying to get all this passing percentage complete. He's trying to, make us play the nice football. You got Wright, who can't clear a ball or kick it that well, trying to send it up to a poker whose second touches a tackle. It just feels like he wants to play a certain way. He's naive enough to think it's going to work right now with the players we've got. You then throw in Jarvis and Kroll, bless him, on for 45 minutes against one of the highest paid, most like prestigious teams in the league, and then throw in a tantrum when they're coming off it halfway through to bring on then the players that have proven it somewhat in Biggins and Apoku. So it just feels like what Fuchs is trying to do with the team might work, but not at the current situation we're at.
Well, with that in mind, listeners, let's have a break and then we'll come back and we'll talk a bit more about how we maybe put some of this right. So, Alfie, Logan just set out in quite stark terms the problem as he sees it with how Christian Fuchs is setting us up, and we're trying to play better football than the players perhaps are able to do. And I guess that's what we saw against Franchise, that, against one of the best teams in the league who press us really, really hard and press every team really, really hard, we're trying to play it along the back line. What's your prescription for how we put this right?
Well, for starters, you can stop trying to implement a playing style with the worst team in the Football League, with players who, funny enough, earlier I was speaking to my two friends and I sent them a list of all the players and said, try and predict their next club. And I think out of the three of us, one player each made it into a League Two team. The rest were like Welsh League, National League South. Just you can't try, and especially when you've come in on your first job. I know you got to start somewhere, but Justin Edinburgh, great player, started at the bottom, worked his way up to League Two, League One. You come into League Two as your first job with some of the worst players I've ever seen, and you try and get all these passes around the back, and then not having a shot. And then I also remember when Fuchs first came in, there was an article about his playing style when he was in America, and he liked his goalkeeper to play as like a centre back sort of role. Well, we can see that now, and within 45 seconds, we were 1-0 down because Jordan Wright was playing as a third defender. Like, that's what annoys me about Fuchs. And going back to when Hugh Jenkins was voted in, I've said it a few times on the podcast recently, but he wanted a certain play style to be played across first team, academy, and down. And he's got these managers in to play this play style, and it doesn't work. And then he sacks them and brings in the same sort of manager who's got no experience to play the same way. So is it Fuchs? Is it how Fuchs is setting the team up, or is it down to the chairman? That's what I want to know.
I think that's the key point. And, we've all been fairly harsh tonight, and I think fans this season have been harsh on the players and the management. But I think we're all also fairly honest that the players are doing as much as they can with the ability they've got. The manager is doing their best, whether it's Hughes or Fuchs, with the players they've got available. The problem is the transfer policy, and we've talked about that ad infinitum. When it comes to Fuchs, I think generally he speaks quite well to the media, and I get that he wants to try and convey a positive energy around the club, and I think that's the right thing to do. But it does then sometimes mean he's saying things in the media like, "We're not in a relegation battle. We were the better team overall." When you're like, the figures don't lie, the league table doesn't lie, and sometimes you do have to be a little bit more honest, because without that honesty, you don't have the credibility then to make the changes that you need to make. George, you wanted to come in.
I think a big problem at the moment is the inconsistency with team selection, whether it's due to who Fuchs wants starting on a certain day against a certain team, or whether it's due to fitness and injuries, which we touched upon earlier. But I think things like trying to play Jed Garner, who we can all agree isn't a great footballer, and I don't think is League Two standard by all means. He wasn't out of place down in Black Ash Park for Newport Saints. But trying to play him in this deeper creative role, it's just not working. We can see that for the last three games where he's tried. You could almost argue three different shapes with three different team selections, and it hasn't worked. He's been in all three, and that role hasn't worked with different players around him. I don't think it's going to work. I think that's something that needs to just stop. We either need that free in midfield or that free up front. Because I just don't think having technically him up front with like Apoku or James Kroll up there on his own is working with James Garner playing like this number 8 role, because he hasn't got the pace to bring the ball forward. He hasn't, in my opinion, got the passing ability or the dribbling ability to beat a man or two and then drive the pass into the wings. So I think there's something that's failing at the moment is the way that the team's been set up. We've sacked David Hughes, rightly so, in many opinion. And then we've brought in someone else who's tried to implement a very similar philosophy that is just isn't working whatsoever, when really you could argue we needed a League Two manager that's got some experience. I mean, you look at Bristol, they've brought in Steve Evans, which granted has probably cost them an absolute fortune, but it's working. Cheltenham, they were struggling. They were arguably worse than us at the start of the season, which is difficult. And they brought in Cottrell, and now they're nearly safe, you could argue. That's
And
probably
Barrow
what we
brought
needed.
in, yeah, Barrow brought in Dino Mamria, who, you know, I fully expect will sort them out as well. Again, just because he has that now. So just to go back to Garner, by the way, I mean, I think he's a really interesting one. I feel like he was brought in to be the striker you would bring off the bench, either in a game you're winning where you need to hold the ball up to see the game out. Well, we don't need one of those very often at the moment because we don't find ourselves in winning positions. Or you throw him off the bench for the last 10 minutes to ask a different question of the opposition. But that isn't how we've been using him. You know, again, it comes back to what we said earlier, that because the squad is so thin, we've been having to use him more regularly. We've been having to play him in positions that are arguably not his strength. And, you know, he again is one who I think is doing the best he can with what's being asked of him. But I just think it's almost kind of cruel to be playing him in that wide role, like you say, when he doesn't have the pace to kind of bring it off. And you know, it's yeah, I mean it's really hard. Uh Logan, what's your two pence? Where do we go from here? You know, we're in the middle of this really tough run of games. We said a few weeks ago on the pod, the run-in isn't too bad, right? We get to play a lot of the teams in that bottom third. We've got a good number of home games in that critical run in April. You know, we get to play the likes of Harrogate at home. But the danger is that by the time that comes around, we're 10, 15 points adrift and it's done. You know, Nathan Blake on the radio and on the Robert podcast was saying exactly this, that, you know, he thinks we could be relegated by the end of March. Having now played three tough games, the ones we're talking about tonight, we've got Salford and Cambridge coming up. It doesn't get any easier. How the hell do we make sure that we don't go into March effectively, you know, 5 points already, could be 10, adrift of safety?
I think well, everyone at the club just needs to have a look at themselves. I understand the players are trying their best. You can tell Fuchs believes we will stay up, which is impressive for a manager that has won two of his games here and has managed to get, I think, is one or two draws with Barnet and Grimsby at home, and the rest being either pathetic losses or major losses. So it's impressive he's staying positive in the media, and you would hope with the players. He talks about how all the players are honest with themselves, which you hope they are. But I mean, you just need to look at the bigger. They need to look at the bigger picture and go, who can play where well, who should be playing, who deserves to be playing. I know we've got a stretched squad, but when he continues to play, I don't want to single players out, but Bobby consistently, when it makes me worried that in the whole season he's created the most chances for us in 7. it shows either concerningly how bad our team is, or does he actually add something? But time and time again, he hogs the ball. He takes too long to get the ball up, and then when he does, he makes the wrong pass. I think some of these players, for their own good and for maybe the team's good, deserve to be dropped for a bit. You think we've got Tan on the waiting on the bench, who, yes, he's not the best player, but he's got something to prove in terms of on loan and for his boyhood club. You think Spellman's playing it a lot, but he's still got something to prove from all last season and the remarks he's had at the start of the season. Jameson, who's just come over from America, has got something to prove. Maybe that Glennon's got something to prove again and again on the left wing. You think up front, Apoku, obviously there's something in the loan contract, we can't argue that. But again, he started on the bench against MK. Does that mean I think Kroll deserves a good running of games? Like, not these 45 minutes, 10-minute, 2-minute cameos. A good, obviously, Bristol Rovers was an exception because we had a limit of strikers who can actually play. But give him, a decent run of games against these tough opponents at the back. You think Salford and Cambridge are going to be them, where he can prove himself and his abilities that we knew him from the Cymru Premier. And then with the midfield, I don't want to make it sound like Fuchs doesn't know what he's doing, but it seems pretty simple to me. You have a destroyer and a ball carrier in Biggins and Sven. You play the two together and you let Biggins get the ball up and Sven win the tackles. The defense, ironically, is the one that's the most safe. You've got a decent left back in Davies, 3 centre backs I would choose in Baker, Brennan, and Delaney. Jenkins if he's fit. Right back, you've obviously got Joe Thomas and Shepherd when he's fit. And goalkeeper, you're looking at Wright or McDonald's. Or if it is Fuchs' son that the one's always training, I wouldn't mind throwing him at this rate if we've got nothing to lose. It feels like just getting the players to understand what they need to do, not fancy, keep the ball, get the ball up, cross when you can, get the ball to the strikers who can convert potentially. And then it just feels like Fuchs needs to. I don't know if he's got an ego. I don't want to believe he's got an ego currently with the position we're at. But he will never manage a Premier League team or Leicester if his first thing is relegation. With a team that was better off than when he took over. We were I think 4 points safety from the Shrewsbury loss just before the Oldham game, which I think is a write-off because obviously you had like 2 days of training with the team. But you're not going to get any other job in this league or any leagues in England if they go, well, you made the team worse.
And I think that's true for so many of the squad. They do all need a shake and being told, if you can't make it here, you ain't going to make it as a pro. It
anyway. Feels like the Garner situation is two things. It feels like when Hughes was trying Brennan in midfield and everyone went, it's not working. It feels like that's Fuchs' version. And also, it does feel like we're the last hope for players in the Football League. If they can't prove it in Newport, they're not proving it anywhere else.
George, in you come, and then I want to look ahead to the next couple of games.
I think it also boils down again to the sacking of Dave Hughes and the appointment of Fuchs. I'm just going to read you some stats. I think they're pretty much on point. Dave Hughes in the league, this is without the cups, played 16, won 3, drew 2, and lost 11. And in that time, we scored 16, conceded 28. And under Fuchs, he's played 1 less game in the league. We've won 1 less game, so we've won 2. We've drawn 4, lost 9, scored 13, and conceded 29. So you could argue that we're actually playing worse football since we've sacked Hughes. And we've had a January transfer window to back Fuchs. Whether the players that have come in are players that Fuchs has wanted or that the chairman has wanted, we'll never know. Only they will know that. But you can argue how do we go forward when we're going backwards every single week?
Yeah, and on that point about who's responsible for the signings, I thought it was interesting and possibly significant yesterday that Jarvis and Kroll both start, but both got hooked at half time, and all sorts of people were speculating then about, are those two signings by Hugh Jenkins rather than the managers, but we're never going to know. We're never going to know that, but it's interesting to look at. Right, keeping an eye on the time. I'm going to ask you all to look ahead then to the Salford and the Cambridge games that we've got this next week, and give me no more than 2 or 3 sentences on what you think would be par for those games in terms of a points return, and your reasoning. So, Alfie, I'll start with you.
Yeah, Salford, all three, because obviously we need them. And I've got a friend who was a Salford fan, so I'd like to finally beat them. We won't. And then Cambridge, I think they're one of the most informed teams in the country. So I know it's a home game and saying bad, take a point. But actually, no, Harrogate beat them. So, yeah, 3 points again.
Okay. George?
Well, we obviously need 6. But I think if we're being realistic, I can't see any. We always struggle against Salford, and Cambridge, like Alfie said, are one of the most informed teams in the league. Granted, they lost to Harrogate, but our home form is also pretty poor. I could be honest with you and say I can see us getting no points from it and just drifting further away.
Logan?
Real, my heart says we get a point at Salford. My head says it's a write-off. I would take a 1-0 loss there. That's how bad I think it will be. I want a good performance. If we lose, we lose. But if we can build on something, and then Cambridge at home, it's got to be a must win. You're looking at what Harrogate did, and you just got to hope we can recreate it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's finish off then with shout outs and beefs. So, George, I'm going to come to you first of all then. Shout outs or beefs?
It was more the comparison to the football we played with Hughes to Fuchs, like we touched upon just a few minutes ago. I don't think we've improved. I think we've just taken further steps back. I think it's down to Jenkins there. Just a really poor appointment when you look at the teams around us that have struggled since the start of the season up to now. What they've done with their managers, who they've brought in instead. I mean, Barrow sacked a manager, brought in a new one, sacked him after 5 games, and have brought in some experience and have got results already. You just need to look at the other teams around us to see what they've done and just put into perspective that we've made the wrong choice. It's not going to change now because we haven't got the money to sack Fuchs and bring in someone else. So we've just got to work with what we got. But I think it's going to be a long 15 games the rest of the season.
Yeah, and quite probably beyond. I mean, yeah, Fuchs is on a long-term contract, and I'm sure we're all hoping that he can turn things round. But the start so far is not an auspicious one. Logan, I'll come to you. Shout outs or beefs?
Shout outs to the travelling away fans. I think with how dire our situation, it is still good that we are turning out in numbers. I think a couple other teams would have probably seen attendance drop, especially away. And I think we're carrying a still a decent minimum of 150 to 200 shows just how good the support can be. And sometimes the players don't deserve it, especially after certain performances. And beef, it's with the people already saying we're down. I understand like the situation, 5 points adrift with the way we're playing. But imagine being the players or like the family of the players, stuff like that, where they're reading just constant abuse about them or their family. I'm all for, giving the players that they deserve. And I think it goes in hand with the away fans, but sitting on the Facebook groups just blabbering when you haven't been in an away game, when we've had Bristol Rovers, we've got Cheltenham to come up and Swindon, we've had 3 close away days. It says more about your pettiness than your true support of the club, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think hopefully we can get a good turnout on Saturday for that Cambridge game. I know none of us are feeling massively full of enthusiasm for Newport County games at the minute, but we've got to go along and get behind the team, and the team need to give us something early doors to get behind them for. It doesn't help when we're watching games home or away and we're conceding early goals. The fans are turning up still, like you say, and want to get behind the team. But we need the fans to keep doing so, and we need the team to put in a crunching early reducer or something, to try and gee everyone up. thinking back the other day to Adam Lewis, who was not the most gifted left back, but one thing you could always rely on was he'd put in a crunching early reducer on his opposite number, get the Hazels stand roaring, and it carried us through a few games. So yeah, bit of that. Alfie, you can finish us off. Shout out some beefs.
Yeah, I'll start with my beef first to end it on a sort of positive. My beef is with, well, it's been a few times now with a certain journalist who is writing our articles, which is very well received online. I must have read now at least 20 times since he's come in that Christian Fuchs is a former Premiership winner, former Austrian captain, a former FA Cup winner. We know who he is. If you don't, Google his name. I don't want to read in May, former Austrian captain, former Premiership and FA Cup winner, Fuchs relegates Newport. Like, just stop. Just stop describing. Well, actually, get someone else better to write it. There's a lot of students out there who would relish at that chance, and just stop describing him in all these words. But yeah, my shout out. With all like the new faces coming in, you see all these new media people, new players, new staff behind the scenes. There's been one constant, and that's Nicola, the photographer, Nicola Johns. It's hard for me to spot the people who really care and carry the club in their hearts, but Nicola, she's been here for I think she's coming up to nearly 10 years. She goes to every game. She puts smiles on people's faces. She even tries to get a picture of me, which is the rarest thing in the world because I always seem to see it as she's getting the camera, and I hide away. But she's reliable. She's been a part of our team. When I was part of the media team, she would drive. She would do most of the trips driving or half it. She's just reliable, and I think the phrase is giving someone their flowers. I'd like to do that for Nicola to end it on a positive.
Yeah, I second that, Alfie. Generally, she's one of the most positive things currently at the club. It's something me and my granddad always looked forward to at the games, try and get her attention to get a photo of us. And I think when you support a club that's having arguably the worst year probably in its close history, to have someone like that who's at every game, always backing the players, always backing the manager, always, and not even in like a statement kind of thing, just spreading positivity. It's a great thing to have.
Yeah, agreed. She is an absolute queen, and she has a huge support from the podcast and beyond. And just on the media stuff, I will say the guys, and I think they're USW students who are doing the behind the scenes stuff with the players. You talked, I think, Alfie, a few months back about how there wasn't that bond at the moment between the players and the fans that perhaps there has been. And I do think all of that stuff is noticeable. And I think it is helping to just kind of humanize the players, comes back to Logan's point. And I think that's really welcome. It's a crap time to be trying to do it because for all the reasons that we talked about, but I appreciate the fact that the club are trying to do it. And I think it's really important and really valuable. So to the people who are behind that, and I think we know who a few of them are, it's really good to see. So, keep it up and fair play to the players as well for sitting down and having some of those, short chats. I think it's really good. And just to finish on one other important thing, we've talked a few times on the pod recently about the loss of Ollie Allen, and last week his family shared the news that his funeral is going to be on Friday, the 6th of March, 1 p.m. at St Michael's Church in Pill. And the wake is going to take place afterwards at the Riverside Sports Bar. So friends of the pod, and good on them for saying they will host the wake. So those of you who want to be at Ollie's funeral, please make note of that date, Friday the 6th of March, and let's have a good turnout from the county faithful. Gents, thank you to all of you for coming on. Alfie and Logan for coming back. George, a very assured debut from you. So thank you to the three of you.
Thanks for having us on.
Cheers.
Thank you very
Great
much.
stuff. And to those of you listening, keep yourself subscribed as always to the 1912 Exiles so you can get episodes when they come out. Thank you as always for your support and contributions on the socials and on our Ko-Fi page. But until next time, I want you to look after yourselves, to look after each other, and above all, as always, keep it county.